There's a certain kind of silence that happens after sending a message. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where a few minutes turn into hours, and hours quietly stretch into a day. You glance at your phone again, even though you already checked it 5 minutes ago, and somewhere in the background, your mind starts filling in the blanks. Maybe they're ignoring me. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe they just don't care enough. What's strange is how quickly a delayed reply can feel personal, even when logically, you know it probably isn't. And if you're someone who replies late yourself, you probably know the other side of that feeling too. The guilt of opening a message, meaning to respond, and somehow not doing it until much later. Sometimes much later than you intended. People often label this behavior in simple ways: cold, disinterested, lazy, bad communicator. But human behavior is rarely that clean. A delayed reply doesn't always mean emotional distance. Sometimes it means the opposite. Sometimes the people who take the longest to respond are the ones thinking the most about what they say, how they're perceived, or whether they even have the emotional energy to enter another interaction. And that's the part most people never see. The psychology of people who reply late is rarely about time management alone. There's usually something deeper happening underneath it. Something emotional, something neurological, something adaptive. Because replying to a message isn't just replying to a message for everyone. For some people, it feels like opening a social loop that requires presence, attention, emotional regulation, and energy they may not fully have at that moment. Research in cognitive psychology has shown that unfinished tasks create mental tension in the brain. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. Normally, this tension pushes people to complete things. But when stress levels are already high, the brain sometimes does the opposite. It avoids the task entirely to reduce emotional overload. That's why some people stare at a message, fully intend to answer, and then feel an almost irrational resistance toward opening it again. And the strange part is, the longer they wait, the harder replying becomes. A 5-minute delay feels normal. A 5-hour delay starts feeling awkward. A 5-day delay starts carrying shame. For emotionally sensitive people, communication often isn't processed casually. Even simple interactions can carry invisible emotional calculations. How should I respond? Will this sound rude? Do I sound distant? Do I have enough energy to be emotionally available right now? Some people experience texting the way others experience small talk at a crowded party. Not unbearable. Just draining in a way that's difficult to explain to people who don't feel it. There's always another notification, another message, another expectation waiting silently behind a screen. A lot of this begins earlier than people realize. Some people grew up in environments where communication carried emotional consequences. Maybe saying the wrong thing led to criticism. Maybe emotional availability wasn't modeled consistently. Maybe conversations felt unpredictable, intrusive, or overwhelming. Over time, the nervous system adapts. It learns caution. It learns delay. It learns to mentally rehearse interactions before entering them. And eventually, even simple replies start carrying unconscious emotional weight. Other people grew up needing large amounts of solitude to regulate themselves emotionally. Their inner world became the place they recovered, processed, and stabilized. Constant communication interrupts that regulation, even if they genuinely care about the people messaging them. So the delay becomes a form of nervous system pacing, not intentional rejection, not manipulation, just regulation. Of course, there are people who reply late because they're careless or uninterested. That exists too. Human behavior is complicated. But the assumption that delayed replies always equal lack of care oversimplifies something deeply human. Different people experience social connection differently. Some people feel closer through constant interaction. Others feel closer through emotional depth, even if communication is infrequent. Neither is morally better. Neither is more evolved. They're simply different relational rhythms. Many people who reply late are actually highly emotionally aware, sometimes too aware. But life keeps moving. Energy never fully arrives. The late replier feels guilty and overwhelmed. The other person feels unimportant and emotionally dismissed. Neither person is necessarily wrong. They're just experiencing connection through different nervous systems.